Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Flash Forward. I am Kay Chamberlain, and this week we're going to be talking about there's a couple of Flash crossovers that we need to cover that take place between, they're separate from the main Flash series, so, because they came out around the same time as the issues that we're going to be covering next, I thought I'd do them now in their own episode, because you can't really fit them in between issues. I mean, you could try, but, they're better off being their own episodes. So, we're going to be starting off with the Flash Plus Nightwing, which is a crossover between the Flash and Nightwing, because during the 90s, 1996 and 1997, DC released a bunch of one-shots that were crossovers between different characters. They released a Flash and Nightwing one, and, a Batman and Arsenal one and stuff. So we're going to do the Flash and Nightwing one today, and after that, we're going to be talking about the Flash / Green Lantern Best of Friends, which is a 2-issue miniseries, a 2-shot, I guess you'd call it, it's like a team-up between the Flash and Kyle Rayner, Wally West and Kyle Rayner. So, yeah, before I get into the Flash and Nightwing, if you're watching this on YouTube, then please subscribe and like the video and hit the notification bell so that whenever new videos drop, you'll be notified. So yeah, let's get straight into it. The Flash Plus Nightwing, issue 1, even though it's just one issue. I don't know why they bothered calling them issue 1 when it's just one issue. Written by Brian Augustine, Mark Waid, and with art by Eduardo Barreto and Jerry Fernandez. So it begins with Wally and Dick, who, as you know, are Flash and Nightwing, Dick Grayson, are on a road trip that they go on every year. Wally was supposed to pick the location this time, and he didn't, and so Dick had to come up with a place for them to go last minute, and Wally's been kind of getting on his nerves, because he's like, are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. And then Wally's like, where are we going? And Dick just, looks at him. It's a pretty great panel of just Dick just looking at him, and Wally just looking forward, not knowing how annoying he is. So it turns out that they're driving to this place known as the Mystery Motel, or the Motel, Nightmare Motel. It's different names that it has, because, well, Nightwing has a reason that he wants to go there, and he says it's just to sightsee, and Wally's just like, man, we're going to a motel, that's super lame, I don't want to get souvenirs, and Nightwing was like, you had a chance to pick a place for us to go, and you left it up to me, so this is where we're going. And they hear a scream come from the motel's maze, so off panel, they quickly put on their costumes in 5 seconds, and then they run into the maze. It's assumed that this woman was screaming probably for 5 minutes or upwards of 20 minutes while they put their costumes on. At least Nightwing. I know that Wally can put on his costume really fast, but I don't think Nightwing can. I think it takes him a good 10 to 20 minutes to put his costume on. So they head into the maze, and they find these 2 women who don't have names. They never get names in this. They're just 2 women wearing superhero costumes, because it's Halloween, I guess. Around Halloween. That it doesn't specify that it is Halloween, but there's a lot of characters in this that wear costumes, so I would assume so. The 2 girls are screaming about how there's blood coming out of the fountain, and so they go to check the fountain, and Dick is like, I don't think it's blood, because it looks a little bit off color. I know what blood looks like. I'll try it, I'll taste it. And Wally's like, no, what are you doing? Why are you eating the blood? And Dick's like, it's not blood, it's red clay, because this fountain hasn't been looked after in a while. So Wally decides that he's going to try and find a way out of the maze by himself, and Dick is like, alright, while he gets lost in the maze, I'll show you how to get out of the maze. So Dick helps the two women get out of the maze really easily, and Wally gets lost in the maze. He tries to find the exit and he never can, and so it gets to the point where he just rushes, like he just runs straight through the bushes, creating like holes throughout all of them until he finally escapes from the maze. And Dick is like, hey, it took you long enough. And Wally was like, I was just doing reconnaissance. I was just like, scoping out the maze just in case there was anything going on. And Dick's like, yeah, right. Anyway, the way that you get out of a maze is you just keep your hand on one of the walls and it'll eventually lead you to the exit. So Wally and Dick decide that they're going to enter into the motel now because that's what they came here for. And they meet this man named Lafarge, who he comes across as if he's a butler, but he's not a butler. He just owns the motel. He kind of looks like Alfred. He's like, we're not really running right now, but because you're superheroes, I'll let you in so that you can take a look around the motel. And that's when he reveals that the owner of the motel is L.P. Gregory, who is very much a parody of H.P. Lovecraft. Apparently he went insane and they say he committed suicide, but it's likely he was murdered because the police found his body stabbed with a lightning rod, surrounded by other lightning rods. But Lafarge is kind of like, but he was a real weirdo, so it's very much in character for him to kill himself in such a weird and fantastic way. He explains that Gregory came from a family of like oil drillers, and that's how he got so much money. But he became guilty because, being an oil driller means that you are helping harm the planet. And so he thought the best way to cleanse his soul was to build this motel and make it like this mysterious supernatural hotel, and he hoped that the supernatural energies would like cleanse him and make him holy, I guess. So Lafarge is like, yeah, he was insane. He believed all this. He was insane. Anyway, if you want to explore the mansion, here's a map. Please use it. Tourists get lost in here all the time. I've got to go and deal with some of the businessmen so that we can pay them back the debt that we owe for building this place, because people are still working on the mansion. Because the trick with the mansion is that, like, they say that they keep building onto it and changing the layout of the house, and that's why it's a mystery mansion, because the layout keeps changing. At least that's what Lafarge says. So Wally and Dick start exploring the mansion, and Dick finds out that reveals to Wally that the police found a weird print, like a weird fingerprint on the lightning rods. And they then hear a familiar scream, and it turns out that the women that were in the maze before are in the mansion, and that they've seen a body surrounded by blood. So Wally finds the body. They also go their separate ways, by the way. Wally and Dick are just like, when they hear the scream, Wally's like, I hear it come from that way, and Dick's like, I hear it coming from that way. Alright, let's split up and go search both ways. And the way that Wally goes, he finds the women, Dick doesn't. And then Wally, they lead Wally to the body that they found, and he's been stabbed with a lightning rod. This guy, who I assume he's just a guy that was like working on the house, like helping build it and stuff. And the man is pointing at a door, and so Wally opens up the door and finds himself in an inner courtyard with about 1,000 more doors. And then he starts opening up doors, and the women start opening up doors. And they find that the doors lead them to different locations on the planet, like New York, Metropolis, London. And Wally's like, what the hell is going on? Oh no, I'm starting to think that this isn't just this isn't a supernatural thing. This might be like an alien thing. I think we've got an invasion on our hands, because aliens are the only people capable of having this kind of technology. And, a house like this would give them access to every location on the planet so that to make invasions much easier. So I think the idea is that we as a reader are supposed to think like, oh, Wally's obviously wrong, right? Like, he thinks it's an invasion, and it turns out it's not. It's just a regular crime. Or just a really weird crime. Dick finds himself in the motel library, where he finds only 2 books. Geometry Today and Trigonometry Made Easy. And he finds a nearby book, and he kind of puts 2 and 2 together, because he finds the blueprints of the motel in this book. And he puts 2 and 2 together and is like, oh, they were using geometry and trigonometry to build this house and make it seem like it was constantly changing and random. But it turns out it's not. It's just built in a way where it seems like that. It's like very intricate. And then Dick realizes that there are like pentagram signs inside the blueprints, like drawn on the blueprints and stuff. And he finds the same print, the weird fingerprint that he found on the lightning rod, on the brochure that was handed to him by Lafarge. So Wally comes in, and Dick tells him that he's found the pentagrams, and he believes that the way that the house is built is that it's basically a giant pentagram. And Wally tells Dick that he thinks that it's going to be an invasion and that aliens are involved, and Dick is like, there's no way it's aliens, it's just, a murderer probably. And Wally shows Dick the entrance to Metropolis, like the instant entrance to Metropolis, and that's when Dick believes Wally and is like, alright, maybe you're right, maybe it is aliens. But I don't think they're planning on coming here in a ship or something. I think they're planning on teleporting here, because this house is a giant pentagram. So I think it's gonna summon something. So Dick and Wally start searching around the mansion, and that's when Lafarge has the girls hostage, and he appears before them. And he's like, things are already underway, I'm not going to let you stop our plan. And it turns out that it is aliens. And that the reason why there were lightning rods is because they're supposed to be used as a homing point for the aliens to teleport to the mansion. And the reason why Gregory was killed was because he was building the house truly because he thought he was doing good. And the aliens used him. And then when he realized that he was being used by aliens, he tried to stop them, which is why he had like broken lightning rods around him. He was trying to break the lightning rods, and so they killed him. So Lafarge pulls out a laser gun and shoots Wally, putting him out of commission for a little bit, like knocking him down. And then Nightwing tells Wally to start running around breaking lightning rods, and at this moment, the aliens start being teleported to the mansion, and they are these weird-looking Cthulhu aliens. And it's actually like while he's breaking the lightning rods, Wally actually sees Lafarge's true form, and they see that Lafarge is like his alien form, which is a weird squid-looking thing. Nightwing gets the perfect window to attack Lafarge because one of the women vomits for no reason. I think they're drinking. I think that's what it is. They're drinking alcohol. They show them like drinking stuff throughout it. They never say that it's alcohol. I think this is supposed to be the confirmation. So one of them vomits from drinking too much alcohol, and that gives Nightwing an opening to that distracts Lafarge long enough so that Nightwing can jump in and kick him. Meanwhile, Wally continues breaking these lightning rods, and he starts throwing them at the aliens to try and hurt them and stuff, and it's not really doing anything. And so Wally comes to the conclusion that he's broken all the lightning rods, so no more aliens are going to be summoned, but they're all here now, so they need to find a way to take care of them all, because Nightwing's struggling to fight them. It seems like they're not going to be able to take them head on. And also, the mother alien has been teleported to the motel as well, which is this huge giant alien. So Wally is like, alright, I'm going to destroy the entire motel, because when I vibrate through things, they explode. So I'll just vibrate through every single part of the mansion, causing the whole mansion to explode, which is exactly what Wally does. And Lafarge actually dies because he grabs onto a nearby lightning rod, and then the lightning rod electrocutes him. Like, lightning strikes down and electrocutes him, killing him. Which is kind of funny, and Dick's just like, fried squid. And yeah, so Dick tries to hold off the aliens and tries to survive while Wally begins tearing the mansion apart, and it eventually falls apart under Dick's feet, so he uses his acrobatics to try and save himself from falling, and Wally grabs Dick to stop him from falling to his death. And the entire mansion crumbles to the ground, and the mother alien basically just kills herself in order to try and finish off everyone that's there. It's like a last-ditch effort in destroying itself. And yeah, the mother alien dies. All of the aliens that were on the mansion, they all die. And Wally and Dick emerge from the rubbles of the motel. And Wally's just like, every year it's the same story. Solve a murder, save the universe. It's getting monotonous. Next year is going to be different. And Dick is just like, the next year you make the plans, Wally. And Wally's like, don't worry about that, my friend. I will. And then he turns to Dick and he's just like, so, where should we go next? And Dick's just like, and that's it. That's the end of the crossover. It's pretty fun. Like, it's kind of weird. It's a bit confusing at times. Definitely one of those weird ones where they were just like, what do we do as a crossover for Dick and Wally? They visit a motel and aliens try to invade. Like, okay. You know what? It was fun. And if you're going to do a one-shot, this is the best kind of story that you can really do for a one-shot. Something that's fun, that really shows off Wally and Dick's friendship and how they work together as a team. Yeah, I would say if you're a fan of Wally West and you're a fan of Dick Grayson and you're a fan of seeing them together, I'd say read this. I don't think a lot of people even know that this crossover exists. Read it. It's pretty good. I liked it. Alright, Green Lantern, Flash, Faster Friends, Part 1. This was a crossover that was written by Ron Mars and Mark Waid. Ron Mars writes the first part, and Mark Waid writes the second part. And each part is split up into chapters, so these segments of the podcast will be covering each chapter. So if you're watching it on YouTube, you'll see like a little thing to go to each specific chapter of this story if you watch like half of it and then you need to take a break or something. So yeah, like I said, part 1 written by Ron Mars with art by a lot of people: Bart Sears, Andy Smith, Jeff Johnson, Ron Lim, Tom Grimberg, Mark Pennington, and Bill Anderson. So there's a lot of people working on this book, and that's just part 1. Part 2 probably has it might have the same artist, I don't know yet. Yeah, so we start off with a prologue. And in the prologue, you think at first, you're led to believe that it's 2 aliens watching over a human and saying that, like, the human has 3 months left to live. They've obviously been working on them, like, experimenting and stuff, but it turns out that they're not aliens. It's actually 2 human guys wearing space suits, or like protective suits, so they look like aliens, and it turns out that they are experimenting on the aliens. So already we're subverting expectations, where it's like, the bad guys are the humans in this situation, the aliens have done nothing wrong. So this poor alien, has been experimented on this whole time, and he's gonna die. And he wakes up, as they leave the room, he wakes up on the hospital bed that he's strapped to. And the 2 guys talk about how, like, they're gonna have to go tell General Gunther that, like, the alien is dying, which is obviously going to upset him because he wants to continue doing experiments. And we find General Gunther having a drink, and as he drinks, the reflection of the alien appears in his glass, and he's like, "Hello, Gunther." And Gunther's just like, "You can talk? How did you get out of lockdown?" And the alien's like, "I was in lockdown for 50 years. You kept me in there 50 years. And that is still nothing compared to my lifespan. But due to all the experiments that you've done to me, I only have 3 months left to live. And that gave me the will I needed to break out of your lockdown and come to you because I basically want to get my revenge. Because you ruined my life and you've killed me, and I don't want to go alone." And Gunther pulls his gun out at this alien. He calls him Alien X. And goes to pull the trigger, and the alien uses mind control on Gunther to force Gunther to put the gun in his mouth and shoot himself in the head. So Gunther's just like, and like blows his brains out. It's pretty messed up, and I love it because he deserved it. And that's the prologue. And I remember I read that and I was like, "Oh my god, we're getting into this. This is good." So there's a mugging going on in Gotham City, and the criminals hear a noise and they think it's Batman. They're like, "Oh, it's him!" And it turns out it's not Batman, it's Alan Scott, aka the original Green Lantern. He went by the name Sentinel for a little while. He's back to being called Green Lantern again, apparently, because he calls himself that in this. So he appears in front of them and he's like, "It's not him. It's me, Alan Scott, Green Lantern." And he beats them up with his powers and saves the family being mugged. Which it's ironic because, like, yeah, it's like a father and... like, it's the parents and then their son. So it's the exact same situation as Bruce Wayne and his parents, except there's more guys. It's not just one. So yeah, he saves this family and then decides to head home. And meanwhile, Jay Garrick, aka the Flash, saves a woman and her kid from being... because a lightning strike happens, which causes a branch to almost fall on them. And Jay comes in and grabs him and runs him out of the way. And his left shoulder is kind of hurting. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And Jay's like, "No, it's fine. The doctor said I'm fine. It's nothing. It'll pass." He's lying. Jay truly doesn't know how long he's got left. He's not going to be able to be a superhero for long. He just said that to keep their minds at ease. So he heads back home as well. And while both Jay and Alan are at home... Alien X, at different points in time, appears before them. He appears before Alan, and Alan recognizes him. And Alien X is like, you worked with the government. You were responsible for what happened to me 50 years ago. And now I need you in order to complete my plan." And he uses his mind powers on Alan and knocks him out. But before he knocks him out, Alan is like, "We helped them, but like we didn't know exactly what was going on. Like they didn't tell us." And he's like, "It's too late," and he knocks Alan out. And then Jay is at his house reminiscing about him and Alan. And that's when Alien X shows up, and Jay is like, "You used your mind powers to make me think about Alan specifically, didn't you?" And Alien X is like, "Yes. And you know the reason why I'm here." And Jay is like, "The ship." And the Alien X is like, "Yep, it's the ship." And uses his mind powers on Jay, knocking him out. But before he passes out, Jay manages to write something on a piece of paper, and then he passes out, like on a book. And then Joanne, or Joan, I think it's Joanne, Jay's wife, shows up. And as she shows up, Alien X disappears with Jay's body, like with Jay. And she sees what Jay's written in the book, and he's written, "It's him." So Joanne quickly calls Molly, who is Alan's wife. And they know exactly what's going on. And Joanne is like, you gotta call Wally. Like, you gotta call Kyle. I'll call Wally. So they both call up Kyle and Wally. And we get most of this from... Like, obviously they both tell Kyle and Wally the same thing, but we learn the backstory to this from Joanne telling Wally. So she tells Wally the entire backstory of what's going on. So basically, 50 years ago, a spaceship landed. And this was one that they had, like, because there was a known sighting in New Mexico at some point. This was before that. This was one that they had kept a secret. So the government learned about this, and a young Gunther recruited Alan and Jay to go and stop this alien that was in the middle of Manhattan, but he didn't tell them specifically why. He led them to believe that the alien was endangering people, so Jay and Alan, being the heroes that they are misled by the government and decide to stop this alien. So they head into the city. The alien can't Alien X can't communicate with them. So, they start, like, attacking him, and then he starts attacking back in self-defense and using his mind powers on them. But because they're young at this point in time, they're able to break through his mind defense and defeat Alien X and chain him up. And then the government comes in, and they just knock him out. They don't even give Alan or Jay a chance to talk to Alien X to try and communicate with him. Joanne says, like, if they'd have had a chance to communicate with him, maybe things would have been different. Because when the government came in, they immediately told Alan and Jay to go away, and Alan and Jay realized that they had been used, and that they weren't even going to be able to see this through to the end. And this is actually what pushed superheroes to never work with the government ever again, and not trust them anymore, was this moment in DC canon. Like, this is where they retcon that, where they're like, this is why superheroes don't work with the government in the DC universe, because they can't trust them. So, because Jay and Alan can't trust them, they find Alien X's ship, and they bury it somewhere and hide it. And that's why Alien X has kidnapped them, because he wants to find his ship, and he needs Alan and Jay, because they're the only ones that know where it is. And they go along with the government's whole, like, weather balloon story that they made up to cover the alien ship, because it's the only way to keep the government from finding the ship, is they have to go along with this story. So Joanne tells Kyle that he needs to go and find Alan and Jay, but he's not going to have to do it alone, because he's going to have Wally with him. And that's where the first chapter ends. And so in the next chapter, we find Kyle and Wally together running through the snowy mountains, beginning their search for Alan and Jay. So Kyle talks about the fact that there have always been partnerships between Flash and Green Lantern, Alan and Scott, Barry and Hal, but he and Wally aren't friends like those other Flash and Green Lanterns were. They kind of just put up with each other. They teamed up once, and they hated each other at that point, but now they've just come to a point of mutual respect, but they still don't work together super well. And Wally is like, can't you use your powers in order to find Alan same way you found Hal? And Kyle's like, that wasn't the same situation. I was able to find Hal because he was powered by the same power I am, but Alan isn't. And the ring isn't magic. I can't just do anything. And Wally's just like, well, we can't just stand around here and do nothing. So let's just split up and search for them, and maybe we'll find something. And so they split up and they go their separate ways, and Kyle was like, man, we really don't work together well, do we? And meanwhile, Alan refuses to help uncover the ship that Alien X is looking for. He's brought Alan and Jay to the place where his ship is apparently buried, and he's telling Alan to uncover it using his powers, and Alan is like, no. Unless you promise that you are just going to leave the planet, I will not bring the ship up. And Alien X is like, why does it matter where I am? I'm going to die soon anyway. Like, it doesn't matter where I'm going to die. And Jay's just like, well, then we're not going to bring the ship up unless you promise to leave Earth alone. And Alien X just forces Alan to dig the ship up using his mind powers. He takes control of Alan's mind and brings the ship up. He's like, follow me, there is much to be done. Kyle manages to zero in on Alan's powers because as soon as Alan starts using them, he can actually sense Alan's powers. And the reason why is because Kyle doesn't know this, but even though Alan isn't directly powered by any kind of power battery, his powers do still come from the Guardians. It's still Guardian energy that powers him. I'm not going to go through Alan's origin. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it in the past. I can't remember what episode it would have been on, but look it up. There's a lot to it. So he figures out where Alan is, and as he figures this out, a polar bear appears behind him, and so Kyle summons a giant demon Santa in order to make the polar bear docile by scaring it enough. And then he leaves and shoots a massive flash symbol into the sky using his ring to let Wally know that to get Wally's attention and let him know that he's found where Alan and Jay are going to be. So Alien X brings Alan and Jay into his ship, and they try to convince Alien X to just leave the planet and ask him why are you doing this? Why are you putting all these innocents in danger? And Alien X is just like, innocence? What would this world know of innocence? And then all of a sudden he's like, what? And the ship opens up and Wally and Kyle enter, and they're like, we're here to save Jay and Alan and stop you. And Kyle's just like, and there's only one of you and two of us. And Alien X is like, actually there's three of me. And it turns out he uses his mind powers to take control of Alan and Jay and get them to fight Kyle and Wally. So they start fighting Kyle and Wally, and Jay is like, Kyle, you gotta do whatever you can to beat us. Don't worry about our safety. You've got to get through us and get to Alien X and stop him from whatever he's doing. So Kyle reluctantly uses his powers against Jay and badly injures him. He's like, oh, Jay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I had no choice. And Jay's like, it's fine. I told you to do this. And Wally's just like, get out of the way, Kyle. You've done enough. And Jay's just like, no, it's not his fault. It'll pass. You need to work together as a team. You need to stop Alien X. That's all that matters. And so Wally and Kyle finally decide to team up. They chase after Alien X, and he's like, whatever it is you're doing, you're done. And he's like, not yet. And Alien X does a symbol with his hands and uses his mind powers, and they're like, oh, what did you do? Tell us, what did you do? And he's like, a message. I simply sent a message into space, a kind of invitation. And Alien X is like, you forced your disease on me, and so now I've decided that I'm going to end my life right here and right now because I'm going to die anyway, and I'm taking you all with me. And so he presses a button on the ship which causes a self-destruct countdown, and Kyle tells Wally to get Alan and Jay out of the ship because he's going to try and stop Alien X. So Wally reluctantly takes Jay and Alan out, and Kyle comes up to Alien X and he's like, look, I don't know all the details here, but it doesn't have to be this way. If you're dying, we can find a doctor who can help you. And Alien X is like, 50 years ago that might have mattered, but now, nothing is going to stop me from doing this and giving you all what you deserve. You're all dying right here. And the ship explodes with Kyle and Alien X on it, killing Alien X. But not Kyle, because initially it seems like Kyle has been killed, but he hasn't. He arrives and Wally's like, Kyle! And Kyle's just like, well, Wally, I didn't think you'd care. And Jay's just like, what happened in there? And Kyle's like, I tried to get him to save himself, but he'd already made his decision, and he said it was too late. Too late for all of us. I only wish I knew what he meant. And we'll find out what Alien X meant in part 2 of The Flash and Green Lantern, Best of Friends. Alright, so we make it to Fast of Friends Part 2, written by Mark Waid and Brian Augustine, with art by Val Semix and Chip Wallace. So Wally grabs Linda and heads to the nearby hospital where he meets with Joanne, and he basically just recollects everything that happened in Part 1 in case you only read Part 2 for some reason. And then Jay shows up, and Joanne... Like, Wally says to Jay, he's like, I can't believe you haven't been telling anyone that you're sick. And Joanna's like, you're sick? Like, how long has this been going on for? And Jay's like, it's been going on for a while, but it's not as simple as just, I'm sick. The reality is, I'm going to die and I'll be dead by morning. And Joanna's like, I can't believe you didn't tell me this. And Jay's like, you have to forgive me for not telling you because I didn't want you to worry. Like, I didn't want to force this amount of pressure on you knowing that I'm not going to be here. I can't, like, I just can't see you upset. Joanna's like, I can't believe you didn't tell me. And she runs out of the room crying, understandably. And before Jay can go after her, Wally sees on the local TV that aliens have started invading Earth. These aliens that all look exactly the same. They've all got the same genes and stuff. They look kind of like weird dinosaur hybrid creatures. They're attacking different parts of the planet. Some heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Captain Marvel, like they're all going around trying to fight these things. And so Wally and Jay are like, we're going to have to figure out what's going on. Because it seems like Alien X, summoned these things here. We thought that he was just doing a last-ditch effort to kill us, but no, it turns out he was actually sending out a signal to summon these things, which was pretty obvious. He basically says that in the first issue. He's like, I sent out a signal, and now they're only just figuring out that he sent out a signal. So they head to Alien X's ship, and Carl and Alan meet up with them. They're like, hey, well, we figured you'd be here, so let's all go in together. And Wally's like, hey, Kyle, can you use your ring to, like, hack into Alien X's computers so we can figure out what this whole deal is? And Kyle's like, I can't really do that. And Wally's like, oh, well, since you're not a help, I guess I'll just run around at super speed and hack in. It's like, why did he even ask Kyle to do it when Wally could just do it? It's like he just wanted an excuse to be a bit of an ass to Kyle. So Wally hacks into the system and they figure out what these aliens are and that they're invading Earth and that they need to stop them, obviously. And as they talk about this, like stopping these aliens, a portal appears in the same room, and these aliens emerge from it, and so the Green Lanterns and Flashes team up together in order to fight them, and they manage to fight them off a little bit, and Kyle uses a plunger construct to push them back through the portal. And then Wally and Kyle decide to go through the portal in order to see where it's going to take them. Because they assume it's probably going to take them to the base that the aliens are coming from, like their mother base. And Wally is like Jay obviously wants to come with them alongside Alan. And Wally is like, no, Jay, you're going to die. Like, you are dying. You're staying here where it's safe. Call the Justice League. Tell them where Kyle and I are. And tell them to be on alert just in case we need help. So Kyle and Wally head into the portal together at the same time. And leave Jay and Alan behind. But Jay and Alan contemplate going in after them. Because Jay doesn't want to die not helping. Like, he wants to be there. Because he says, he's like, I'm going to die anyway. He doesn't say this to Alan. He says it to himself. He hasn't told Alan that he's going to die yet. He says to himself, I'm going to go in there and do something. And Alan just thinks that, Jay is just being a bit of, a bit of a coward, because Jay's not 100% sure on what exactly he wants to do, but he just knows he wants to help Wally and Kyle. Meanwhile, Linda and Joanne head back to their house, and Joanne talks about how she's just so hurt by the fact that Jay has been lying to her, but she does come to the recollection that, like, that she senses him, and that, like, even though he's been lying, so basically I'm probably just gonna have to read it out, because she gives a whole little speech where she's just like, I realize just how much I will always love him. He's not with me now, but he'll be back to take my hand one last time. I'm certain of it. Sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm left wondering if this is the time he's not coming home, I sense him, I feel him with me, and I know that one way or another we'll be together forever. So she comes to the conclusion of, like, even though he didn't tell her he was gonna die, she knows that she's going to be okay when he dies, because she'll always be with him. And Jay is actually in the room, vibrating himself so that she can't see him, watching her say this, and I think she knows that he's there. The idea is that she knows. So after seeing Joanne talk about him, Jay decides that he needs to do what he needs to do, which is go into the portal with Alan. So they do that. They head into the portal with Alan. They head into the portal together that Wally and Kyle went in. And then we find Wally on this other planet. Except it's not Wally. It's actually Kyle wearing Wally's costume. Because it turns out Wally and Kyle have been body swapped. But not mind swapped. No, or not even body swapped. They've been costume swapped. And they think that they are each other, even though their minds haven't actually been swapped. So Kyle is wearing Wally's costume and he thinks he's Wally. And Wally is wearing Kyle's costume and he thinks he's Kyle. But obviously Kyle doesn't have super speed, so he tries to run really fast. He's like, why am I not running fast? I'm supposed to be the Flash. And Wally can't use the ring because he's not Kyle, even though he thinks he's Kyle. It's kind of confusing. So Kyle sees a bunch of aliens and they all start attacking him, and they all start attacking Wally as well, and Wally can't do anything because he thinks he's the Green Lantern, so he hasn't even tried running fast yet. Alan comes in and he saves Wally, and then gets really confused by Wally because Wally keeps calling himself Kyle, and Alan's just like, you're not Kyle, you are Wally West. And Wally's just like, I'm not Wally, I'm Kyle, I'm the Green Lantern. And Alan's just like, look, I've had enough of this, you're annoying me with this crap, let's go find Jay. And it's at this moment that Wally, see, even I'm getting confused. Wally tells Alan that Jay is gonna die. Which is the first hint. That should be the first hint to Wally that he is Wally and not Kyle, is because he knows this, because Kyle doesn't know this. But yeah, Wally tells Alan that Jay is gonna die, and Alan's just like, I can't believe that son of a bitch didn't tell me that he was gonna die. Alright, let's go find him. And so Alan and Wally head off to find Jay. Meanwhile, Jay finds Kyle, and Jay's just like, what are you doing, son? Why are you trying to run fast? You're Kyle Rayner, not Wally West. You're not a Flash. I know the Flash is. I'm kind of a Flash aficionado. And just like Wally, Kyle refuses to believe that he's not Wally, that he's not the Flash. Wally and Alan find this entire pit full of, like, what looks like, what's the name? Amber gems. And Wally falls into the pit, and it turns out that they're not amber gems. They're actually skeletons of a species that used to live on this planet, but they've all died. Meanwhile, Kyle and Jay find this statue that the species on this planet worships, and then they find a member of the species dying, and they come to the conclusion that this alien has been sucked dry of its energy. Something has absorbed it of its energy, whatever is on this planet, and that it's probably linked to the aliens that are being sent to Earth. So, Wally finally figures out that he is the Flash, because when he falls into the pit and he sees that they're skeletons, he gets really scared and he runs out of the pit, And when he runs, he uses super speed, and he's like, I've got super speed. That means I must be the Flash. And meanwhile, Kyle figures out that he's Green Lantern because he says, where there's a will, there's a way. And then Jay's just like, and only a Green Lantern would say that. And Kyle's like, yep, you're right. Only a Green Lantern would ever say, where there's a will, there's a way. I must be a Green Lantern. Where's my ring? Like, that's literally how Kyle... It's like Mark Waid couldn't figure out a way to make Kyle remember who he was. Like, without Jay being like, you had a dead girlfriend who got shoved in a fridge. Like, that's kind of the only way to really make Kyle remember who he is. So, Wally and Kyle and, like, the Green Lanterns and Flashes all unite together. And Kyle's just like, give me my ring, Wally. And Wally's just like, hey, why are you blaming me? It's not my fault that I had your ring. And they switch costumes back, and everything's back to normal. We're done with that plot. And they find the alien citadel, which they could just see in the distance, so they were able to go and find it by running to it and flying to it and whatever. They make it into the citadel, and as they go further into it, they find the mother of this alien species that is invading Earth. It's a giant, gooey-looking thing that's basically a giant parasite sucking the energy from the planet and the species, which explains all the skeletons. They are all aliens that have already had the life sucked out of them by this giant parasite thing that's inside the planet. And because the Flashes and Green Lanterns have invaded this parasite's privacy, it summons all of its alien drones to fight them. And they're like, hey, if they've all been summoned here, that means there's probably less of them on Earth. So as long as we keep them here, we might die, but at least they're gonna be, like, away from Earth. So they start fighting the aliens, and they realize that, like, the parasite is struggling to produce more of them. It's taking a lot of energy. And Jay doesn't want to kill this giant parasite because it believes that it's just doing what it's doing to survive. And he feels a certain connection to this parasite because he himself is trying to fight against his own mortality and trying to come to terms with the fact that he will die and that he doesn't want to hurt other people in order to just keep himself alive. And so he tries to talk to the giant parasite. He's basically just like, hey, I completely understand you. You don't like the fact that you have mortality, that you're not immortal, and you're trying to ignore the pain and suffering that you are causing to people. But I know for a fact that you don't enjoy it, and I think it's important that you listen to your heart and stop this. Stop the suffering. Stop killing people just to preserve your own life, because I know that's not, deep down, that's not what you want. And the alien parasite mother listens to him and creates a rift and teleports away, creates a giant portal and teleports away. And they're like, where did it go? Did it go to Earth? And Jay's like, no, I think it's gone. I think it's come to terms with the fact that it is mortal, and I think it's prepared to die, or try and find a way to live without killing or causing suffering. And then they realize that the alien mother has also created 4 portals for them to go through. And Alan is like, why did it create 4 separate portals instead of just one big one? And then they realize that the alien drones all have the same DNA. And going through these portals, it pulls apart your DNA and puts it back together. So if the alien drones all go in at the same time, it pulls apart their DNA and puts them back together and mixes and matches their DNA. But because they all have the same DNA, it doesn't matter for those aliens. But for the humans, like the heroes, like Wally and Kyle, if they go through the portal at the same time, their DNA gets mixed up, which explains why they both ended up in their own costumes and thought they were the other person. That's the explanation for the mind swapping thing. Their DNA got mixed up, even though it didn't actually get mixed up. Like, at most, their clothes just got mixed up. because they didn't get mind swapped or anything. They just thought they were each other. But because of this revelation, I hope I explained that well enough, Jay and Alan realize that if they go into the portal at the same time, their DNA will get mixed up. So maybe when they come out the other end, Alan's good cells will go inside Jay's body, healing Jay of his deathly sickness. But Jay also says, yeah, but what if it's the other way around, and my cells go into yours and make you sick and then you die? I can't let that happen. And so Jay tries to go through the portal separately, and Alan's just like, oh no, you don't, you son of a bitch. We're going in that portal at the same time, whether you like it or not. And so he chases after Jay, and Jay's just like, get away from me! You're not gonna get to the portal before I do. I'm not gonna let you risk your own life just for mine. And, it's like neck and neck, and they manage to, like, Alan manages to just get through the portal at the same time as Jay. They make it through. Jay actually dies, basically. He has a heart attack as he hits the portal. Like, as he goes through the portal, Jay has a heart attack a lot, like, as Alan flies through it with him. He falls out the other side, and they think Jay has died. They find him, and they're just like, oh my god, Jay, is it too late? And Jay's just like, ugh, what are you looking at me for? Sizing this old man up for a casket? And they head to the hospital, and it turns out Jay is fine. It worked. Alan's DNA mixing with him, sorry, got hiccups for some reason. Alan's DNA mixing with him cured him of his deadly disease. And that's when it's revealed that Jay and Alan, because Wally and Kyle haven't been getting along at all, and they're confused at how Jay and Alan are best friends. They're just like, how are you best friends? And Jay and Alan are just like, well, we weren't always best friends. We actually hated each other at first. And see, that's how it is with, like, Green Lanterns and Flashes, is that we always become friends eventually, and the two of you will be friends one day, and there's a good chance that you will be the greatest, like, one of the greatest teams of all time. And Kyle and Wally just kind of have that sitcom pose at the end where they're back to back, just like, whatever. And, but you know deep inside they're contemplating the idea of actually becoming friends. And so it'll be interesting to see in the future Wally and Kyle's relationship continue to develop. I hope it does. Sadly, comic books tend to have a history of characters not really developing to a certain point, but I like to believe that in this case it's going to be different, and Wally and Kyle will actually develop their friendship. And that is the end of Faster Friends. My thoughts on that whole crossover is I really enjoyed part one. Part one was amazing. Part two had amazing moments in it, but it wasn't as good as part one. It was definitely like, we gotta do like this, the alien invasion happens, so it's just a lot of fighting. The best parts of part two are like the interactions between Alan and Jay. Worst part of part two is definitely the body swapping stuff, because like the Freaky Friday stuff, because it wasn't necessary. Like, they used it as kind of like it explains how they can help Jay at the end of the story, but like at the same time it wasn't really worth it because the whole body swap storyline was just so confusing. They could have avoided doing that and still, like, they didn't even need that to come to the conclusion at the end that going in the portals at the same time would help save Jay. You know, they would have, all they needed was the aliens as proof of that. But yeah, overall, pretty good. I will say, like, when Jay is talking to the alien Mother Queen about, like, trying to stop her from killing people by absorbing their energy, I had to read that whole speech twice, because my first time reading it, I didn't get what he was talking about, and I had to read it again. I was like, wait a minute, okay, let me wrap my head around this. What is he talking about? And I had to read it again, because it's a little confusing. Sometimes when Mark Waid does, like, big speeches for characters, they can be a little bit complicated, and it's like, you gotta read it a couple of times to really wrap your head around it. But yeah, that was a good crossover event. I highly recommend checking it out. It's the best time, like it's the best event that like it's the best crossover that Wally West and Kyle Rayner have had. They did have another one, and that was good, but like this one's a lot better. The other one was just in Green Lantern, so I didn't cover it. But this one was better, so I highly recommend checking it out. And that's gonna be it for this episode of Flash Forward. I really enjoyed doing this episode. It was nice to be able to cover these crossovers that I wasn't really able to fit in between other issues. This was the perfect time to do it, and I was looking forward to reading these for a long time. I've been waiting to read these since I started, but I had to wait until the release year because I'm trying to do this in chronological order. So, yeah, check them out. Check out Flash Plus Nightwing, and check out Flash, Green Lantern, Faster Friends. They are all on DC Universe Online Infinite if you can't find them physically. But I think you can also, like, I don't know if you can get Flash Plus Nightwing. That would be just a single issue. You might have to go on eBay or something to find that. But I'm pretty sure you can find a trade paperback of Faster Friends on Amazon. I don't know if they've reprinted that anytime soon, but if you can't find physical copies of it, you can read it online, like on the app. So, yeah, that's going to be it. And next week, I'm going to be continuing Mark Waid's run all the way up to, we're going to be covering the last issues that he did before he took a break. So we're going to be stopping right when Grant Morrison and Mark Millar take over for their yearly stint on the Flash. They did a 1 year run on the Flash while Mark was taking a break. So yeah, we're gonna do up to Mark Waid's break, and then after that, we're gonna do Genesis, the crossover event written by John Byrne, and we're gonna do all the tie-ins. So look forward to the next couple of weeks because they're gonna be pretty good. They're gonna be pretty jam-packed, full of stuff. Yeah, I hope to see you next week, and have a good one.